You've just stepped into the Motivation Library, a place where struggles turn into stories of strength and dreams transform into destinies. Every book is a path, every chapter a step forward. Today, we walk a new path. Let's begin. Preface: The birth of power in the fire. There comes a moment, unexpected, shattering, irreversible, when life as you know it breaks. Not with a scream, but with silence. A silence so thick it swallows your breath and leaves you standing in the debris of everything you thought you were. It's that night when the tears don't stop. That moment when your dreams lie in pieces. That chapter you never wanted to live, but the one that will define who you become. That's where turning pain into power begins. Not at the mountaintop, not after victory, but in the ashes, where your old self crumbles and something fierce begins to rise. They don't tell you this truth often enough. Before you rise, you will break. Before you shine, you will burn. Before you find peace, you will face chaos so deep it threatens to swallow you whole. But inside that storm, buried beneath the grief, the loss, the betrayal, lives the spark of your becoming. Pain is not your enemy. It's your awakening. It's the universe's wild, brutal invitation to shed everything false and step into your truest power. Because the truth is this: pain doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. This is not a book of comfort. This is a book of transformation. It's not about masking the hurt or pretending everything happens for a reason. It's about facing the wound, touching the scar, and discovering that you're still breathing, that the heart still beats, that the fire still burns. Because there's magic in the moment when you realize you didn't just survive, you transcended. Every person you admire has walked through their own version of hell. They've cried behind closed doors, doubted their worth, begged for answers that never came. But they made a decision, not to let the fire end them, but to let it forge them. That's what this book is about, the alchemy of the human soul. The process of turning pain into purpose, heartbreak into healing, wounds into wisdom. You'll see how every scar tells a story of courage, how what broke you once can become the foundation of your unshakable strength. This book is for the quiet warriors, the ones who laugh loud but ache deep, the ones who keep showing up, even when the world has given them 1,000 reasons not to. The ones who've been told they're too broken, too emotional, too late, too far gone. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are becoming something that pain cannot destroy. Unstoppable. Because pain doesn't just shape resilience. It carves character. It doesn't weaken you. It refines you. It doesn't end your story. It begins a new one. As you turn these pages, you will walk through fire and find yourself emerging with gold. You'll learn to honor your scars as symbols of survival. You'll begin to understand that healing isn't about forgetting what hurt you. It's about reclaiming the power it once took from you. This book will not give you easy answers. It will give you truth, raw, unfiltered, and real. And in that truth, you'll find freedom. By the time you reach the end, I don't want you to just see light. I want you to become it. This is your awakening, the rebirth of your strength, the reclamation of your soul, the transformation of pain into pure, unstoppable power. This isn't just a book. It's a mirror, reflecting who you were, revealing who you are, and igniting who you're meant to become. Welcome to the fire that doesn't burn you, it builds you. Welcome to your resurrection. Welcome to turning pain into power. Chapter 1: The Shattered Beginning. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the day your soul finally wakes up. There comes a moment, sharp, silent, and unforgettable, when the world you built crumbles before your eyes. It could be a breakup, a betrayal, a loss you didn't see coming, or that slow erosion, the kind that doesn't explode but fades you, piece by piece, until one day you wake up and don't recognize the person in the mirror. Pain doesn't always knock. Sometimes it kicks the door open, and when it does, it leaves nothing untouched. You stand there, stunned, breathless, trying to gather fragments of what once felt whole. Dreams you planned, relationships you trusted, the version of yourself you thought was solid. All of it, scattered like glass under your feet. This is where transformation begins, in the ruins. Not when you're ready, but when life gives you no other choice. The illusion of control. We grow up believing life follows logic. If we do the right things, work hard, love deeply, plan carefully, it'll all make sense. But then reality reminds us, Control is a fragile illusion. Ask Elena, a 32-year-old architect who had her dream career mapped to perfection. She was disciplined, driven, the kind of person who colored inside every line life gave her. Then, one rainy afternoon, she received a phone call. Her younger brother had died in an accident. In one heartbeat, her life divided into before and after. The next morning, she couldn't design buildings anymore. The blueprints mocked her. The symmetry she once loved now felt hollow. She stared at her screen and whispered to herself, "What's the point?" Months passed in a blur of numbness, sleep, silence, and slow disconnection. But one evening, she picked up her brother's sketchbook. Inside it, she found something that would change her forever, a note he had written weeks before his death. "You always build things that last, Elena. But don't forget, love, laughter, and memories are the real foundations." That night, something cracked open inside her, not in destruction, but in awakening. Her grief didn't vanish, but it shifted shape. She started volunteering to design shelters for families who had lost homes in natural disasters. Her pain became her blueprint. Her heartbreak became her calling. When the world stops making sense, pain strips away illusion, the illusion of permanence, of predictability, of certainty. But it also reveals truth. What really matters, who really stays, and who you really are when everything else is gone. Think of Nelson Mandela, spending 27 years behind bars, robbed of freedom, future, and family. Most men would have been broken. He emerged unbent. He said once, "I never lose. I either win or learn." That sentence wasn't born of comfort. It was born in concrete cells, surrounded by silence, fueled by an unkillable fire. Every great transformation story begins here, not at the mountaintop, but in the valley. The valley is where strength is born. The mirror of pain. Pain is the world's most honest mirror. It shows us who we really are, not who we pretend to be. When everything collapses, you see your reflection stripped of masks and titles. It's just you, raw, trembling, still standing. There's something sacred about that naked truth. Because once you've faced your own breaking, you stop fearing life. You realize, if I can survive this, I can survive anything. And that realization changes everything. You start walking differently, talking differently. You stop chasing validation and start seeking meaning. Pain, ironically, teaches clarity. Ordinary heroes of the broken road. Pain doesn't only visit the extraordinary, it shapes them from the ordinary. Take Marcus, a bus driver from Detroit. He lost his wife of 18 years to cancer. For months, he was a ghost behind the wheel, driving, stopping, pretending. But then he started something quietly revolutionary. Every morning, he greeted each passenger by name, offered small affirmations, and said, "Today's a new chance, my friend." At first, it was mechanical. Then it became a mission. He once said in a local interview, "I couldn't save her life, but maybe I can make someone else's day worth living." He didn't cure pain. He turned it into purpose. And purpose, when born from pain, burns longer than any passion ever could. The breaking before the becoming. Every transformation demands a breaking. Butterflies aren't born, they disintegrate inside cocoons. Seeds don't bloom, they split open in the dark. Gold isn't precious until it's passed through fire. So when you're shattered, when you're on your knees, remember, this is not destruction. This is initiation. Pain is not punishment. It's preparation. From victim to vessel. Most people run from pain. Few sit with it long enough to listen. But those who do become something else. They become vessels, carriers of wisdom, compassion, and light. Because pain doesn't just break you. It cleanses you of what's fake. It teaches empathy you can't learn from comfort. It teaches patience you can't learn from peace. It teaches depth you can't learn from ease. The ones who have been through the fire, they glow differently. You can see it in their eyes. The softness of someone who's known storms, and the strength of someone who's survived them. The moment you decide to rise. Every journey from pain to power begins with a single moment of decision. Not a loud one. Not cinematic. Just that quiet whisper inside your chest saying, "I can't live like this anymore." That whisper is sacred. It's the sound of your spirit waking up. The road ahead. The truth is, pain never fully disappears. It changes form. It becomes a scar, a story, a strength. And that's the paradox. The wound that once made you weak becomes the reason you're unbreakable. You may not see it now, But one day, you'll look back and realize the day you fell apart was the day life began to build you again. Key takeaways. Pain isn't the end. It's the doorway to transformation. Every breakdown hides the seed of a breakthrough. Your scars are proof that you were stronger than what tried to destroy you. Pain reveals purpose, if you're willing to face it instead of flee it. Action step/reflection. Take a quiet moment today and write down the hardest experience of your life so far, what it took from you, and what it gave you that you didn't have before. Because somewhere in that reflection, in that heartbreak, lies the first spark of your power. Chapter 2. The weight you carry. The heaviest burdens are often the ones no one can see. There's a kind of weight that doesn't live on your shoulders. It lives inside your chest. It's the invisible load you carry through your days. A silent heaviness that smiles at work, laughs at dinner, and then collapses in private. It's the weight of what could have been. The weight of what you never said. The weight of who you were before life happened. And it's exhausting. You learn to function with it, to move through the world like a soldier carrying a wound no one asks about. You call it stress, responsibility, just life. But deep down, you know, it's more than that. It's grief that never got permission to speak. It's guilt that never got forgiveness. It's fear disguised as productivity. You've been carrying it so long that you've forgotten what lightness even feels like. The silent load. When you wake up, it's already there. That ache behind your ribs, the one you can't explain. It follows you into the shower, the meeting, the commute, the small talk. You smile when people ask how you are, because saying fine is easier than unraveling years of quiet pain. But the truth? You're tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, the kind that comes from fighting battles no one else can see. You've become so used to being strong for others that you forgot how to fall apart for yourself. The faces of weight. The weight you carry might look different for everyone. For some, it's failure, the sting of dreams that never came true. For others, it's expectation, the crushing pressure to live up to someone else's version of success. And for many, it's shame, that haunting belief that you're not enough, that something in you is unworthy of peace. There's the mother who smiles through exhaustion, carrying guilt for the moments she wishes she could run away. The son who hides his tears because he was taught that real men don't cry. The daughter who keeps chasing approval, trying to earn love she should have been given freely. Each of them, carrying invisible weights, performing normalcy like it's theater. Each of them, one heartbeat away from breaking. The weight of the unspoken. We live in a world that worships strength but fears vulnerability. So we hide our bruises behind productivity. We post highlight reels and call them truth. We choke on emotions and call it discipline. But here's the paradox. The more you suppress your pain, the heavier it grows. Pain unexpressed doesn't disappear, it burrows deeper. It seeps into your habits, your relationships, your silence. It shapes the way you love and the way you protect yourself from being loved. You start building emotional walls, not realizing that walls don't just keep people out, they keep you trapped in. The ghost you carry. Sometimes your weight isn't even yours. It's inherited, passed down through generations. Your parents' fears, your ancestors' traumas, their survival patterns, now living in your nervous system. Maybe you were raised by someone who never healed. Someone who taught you that love meant sacrifice, or that self-worth must be earned. And now, without realizing it, you carry their ghosts in your bones, repeating patterns that aren't even yours to keep. Healing, then, isn't just about letting go of your own pain. It's about laying down the pain that was never yours to begin with. The moment you break down in silence. There's a night that comes for everyone. The night when strength finally gives out. Maybe it's 2 a.m., and the room is dark except for the blue light of your phone screen. You scroll through photos, through memories, through moments frozen in time, and something in you finally snaps. The tears you've been holding back for months, maybe years, finally spill. And for the first time in forever, you don't try to stop them. You just let it happen. You collapse into the truth of your humanity. The beautiful, brutal, messy truth that you can't always be okay. And strangely, in that breakdown, something sacred happens. You feel lighter. Not because the pain is gone, but because you finally stopped pretending it wasn't there. The courage to be honest. Honesty is the first act of healing. But it's not the kind of honesty the world celebrates. It's not about confessing your sins or shouting your story. It's about sitting with yourself in radical truth and whispering, "I'm not okay right now." And that's okay. It's the kind of courage that doesn't roar, it trembles. But make no mistake, trembling honesty is still courage. Because when you tell yourself the truth, when you stop dressing your wounds in denial, you reclaim your power. The weight begins to shift. Carrying doesn't mean you're weak. We often mistake carrying weight for failure, like the presence of pain means the absence of strength. But in reality, it's the opposite. You've survived things that would have destroyed others. You've held yourself together when no one else showed up. You've smiled through storms, walked through fire, and still found reasons to care. That's not weakness. That's endurance in its purest form. Sometimes strength isn't loud or heroic. Sometimes it's quiet, just getting out of bed when your soul doesn't want to. Sometimes it's answering the phone when all you want is silence. Sometimes it's trying again after the last time almost broke you. The weight transforms when you do. There's a secret no one tells you about pain. It doesn't shrink when you ignore it. It transforms when you face it. When you finally look at your weight, really look at it, you start to understand what it's been trying to teach you all along. Maybe that heartbreak wasn't just loss. Maybe it was life's way of clearing space for something better. Maybe that failure wasn't punishment. Maybe it was protection. Maybe the delay wasn't denial. It was direction. Everything you've carried has shaped you, sculpted resilience into your bones. It's not your enemy. It's your forge. The lightness of letting go. One day, without realizing it, you'll exhale differently. You'll catch yourself laughing again, not because life got easier, but because you stopped fighting what already happened. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means accepting that the story didn't go the way you wanted, and that's okay. It means releasing the fantasy of what if and embracing the beauty of what is. You'll start to see the scars as part of your design, proof that you've lived, loved, and learned. And in that acceptance, the weight you carry begins to turn into wisdom. Real stories, real weight. When Chester Bennington, the voice of Linkin Park, sang about pain, it wasn't poetry. It was prophecy. He carried darkness so deep that his voice became the anthem for millions who felt unseen. When Oprah Winfrey spoke of her childhood trauma, she transformed it into a platform for healing millions. When Malala Yousafzai faced bullets for her voice, she carried not just her pain, but the pain of every silenced girl. And she turned it into power. Different stories, same weight, all proving one truth. What breaks you can also build you, if you refuse to stay buried. You are not weak for feeling it all. This is your reminder. Feeling deeply is not a flaw. It's your superpower. Empathy, compassion, courage, they're born from pain. If you've cried, you've cared. If you've hurt, you've lived. If you've fallen, you've tried. The world doesn't need numb heroes. It needs humans who have felt everything and still choose to rise. The promise hidden inside the pain. Every time life breaks you, it also leaves a promise hidden in the rubble. That if you rise again, you'll rise stronger. You'll carry the same weight, but it won't crush you anymore. You'll carry it with grace, with purpose, with gratitude. And one day, you'll use that very pain to help someone else carry theirs. That's how power is born, through shared humanity. Key takeaways. Everyone carries invisible weight. Don't mistake silence for peace. Healing begins the moment you tell yourself the truth. Your pain is not weakness, it's evidence of your depth. The act of feeling is the act of freeing. Action step/reflection. Find a quiet space and write down 3 things you've been silently carrying: fears, regrets, expectations. Then, ask yourself one question. What would it feel like to set this down, even for a day? Because sometimes healing doesn't mean conquering the weight. Sometimes, it begins with simply putting it down. Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. When surrender becomes the start of healing. Real stories of people who found freedom in rock bottom. There's a moment in every life when the noise stops. Not because things have calmed down, but because everything inside you has shattered so loudly that there's nothing left to break. It's the moment you sit on the floor, your back against a wall, eyes hollow, breathing shallow, wondering how the world can still spin when yours has just stopped. The moment where pain isn't just emotional anymore, it's physical. It lives in your chest, your bones, your heartbeat. That moment is called the breaking point. And contrary to what you've been taught, it's not the end of you. It's the beginning of who you're meant to become. The moment everything collapses. When Maya lost her husband in a sudden accident, She didn't cry for days. She just stared, blankly, at the same wall, the same chair, the same silence that refused to end. People brought flowers and casseroles, but she couldn't smell or taste or feel. Everything I loved, she said later, suddenly existed only in past tense. Weeks later, one morning, she found herself on the bathroom floor, gripping the sink, sobbing until her whole body shook. It was the first time she had actually felt something since he died. It wasn't peace. It wasn't hope. It was pure collapse, the body's final surrender after holding too much for too long. But that night, she did something small, something ordinary. She took a deep breath. She whispered to herself, "I don't know how to live without him, but maybe I can try." That single whisper, "Maybe I can try," is where healing begins. Because healing doesn't start with a plan. It starts with a choice. A decision to keep breathing in a world that's taken your air. Rock bottom has no map. You never plan to break. You don't pencil it into your calendar. It just arrives, uninvited, through betrayal, loss, failure, heartbreak, or exhaustion. Rock bottom is not a place you visit. It's a place you become. It strips you of everything you thought you were. Your plans, your pride, your certainty, your identity. It leaves you naked in the dark, face to face with your most painful truth. You can't control everything. You never could. But here's what most people don't realize. Rock bottom is not the end of the road. It's the ground on which you finally stand still long enough to rebuild. Think of Kunal, a young entrepreneur who poured every rupee, every hour, every ounce of belief into his startup. For 3 years, he lived on coffee and adrenaline, telling himself he was just one deal away. Then one deal fell apart. Then another. Then the bank called. He lost everything. His business, his home, even his friends who couldn't handle his failure. He spent nights staring at the ceiling, haunted by the question, who am I if I'm not succeeding? But after months of silence, one night, he wrote something in his notebook. If success is what broke me, maybe failure is what will free me. And it did. He rebuilt slowly, not the same business, but a different kind of life. He started mentoring young founders who were afraid of failing. He taught them how to build with heart, not just hustle. That mentorship became his mission and his healing. The science of surrender. Psychologists call it ego death, the moment when everything you've used to define yourself stops working. It feels terrifying because your brain is wired for control. When you lose it, your nervous system panics, fight, flight, or freeze. But something miraculous happens when you stay in that stillness long enough. The fight fades, and the healing begins. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to the truth. To accept that some things fell apart, so you could stop living a life that wasn't meant for you. There's a kind of peace that only comes when you stop pretending to be strong. When you stop saying, "I'm fine." When you finally whisper, "I'm not okay." Because that's when your soul exhales and starts to heal. Stories of breaking and beginning. 1. The artist who forgot how to dream. Lena was a painter who stopped painting after her father told her she'd never make money from art. She got a job in finance, climbed the ladder, bought the car, the apartment, the status. But something inside her grew quieter each year. Until one night, promotion night, she came home to an empty apartment, looked at her champagne glass, and realized she felt nothing. That night, she sat on the floor and cried, not because of failure, but because of success without joy. The next day, she took a canvas out of storage. Her first brushstroke in 10 years was crooked, trembling, and perfect. "I thought breaking meant losing everything," she later said. "It actually meant finding what was left." 2. The soldier who lost himself. Marcus had served for 15 years. Discipline, duty, control. But after a mission went wrong and he lost his best friend, he came home with invisible wounds. He couldn't sleep, couldn't sit still, couldn't connect. He tried therapy, medication, distractions. Nothing helped. Until one morning, sitting on the porch, he broke down completely. He stopped running from the guilt. He started writing letters to his fallen friend. Letters he never sent, but that saved him. Those letters became a book that helped thousands of veterans heal through words. "Pain turned me into a writer," he said. "And writing turned my pain into purpose." 3. The mother who lost and found herself. Aisha's daughter was born with a rare illness. She lived for only 8 months. Months filled with hospital rooms, sleepless nights, and prayers whispered into machines. When her daughter passed, Aisha lost her sense of self. She spent years in numbness, avoiding other children, other mothers, birthdays, laughter. Then, one day, she saw another grieving mother in the same hospital, crying alone in a hallway. Without thinking, Aisha walked over and hugged her. That moment, one heart reaching for another, reignited her purpose. She later founded a support group for grieving parents. Today, hundreds of families find hope through her work. Her pain became a bridge, connecting broken hearts that needed to find each other. The gift inside the ruins. Breaking doesn't destroy you. It exposes you. It strips away the illusions, the perfection, the masks, the titles, and reveals what's real. When glass shatters, light gets in from angles it couldn't before. That's what breaking does to the soul. It lets light in through the cracks. The truth is, you don't rebuild by putting the pieces back the way they were. You rebuild by creating something new from the ashes. Pain changes your shape, but not your worth. It rearranges you so you can fit into a new kind of purpose. The road to healing. Healing doesn't start with strength. It starts with honesty. You can't heal from what you keep pretending doesn't hurt. So stop hiding your pain behind productivity. Stop disguising exhaustion as ambition. Stop wearing your wounds like armor. The moment you admit you're broken, that's the moment you start to become whole again. Because healing isn't about getting back to who you were. It's about becoming someone new, someone softer, wiser, braver. The turning point. The breaking point is not your punishment. It's your portal. It's life's way of saying, the version of you that got you here can't take you further. It hurts because transformation always does. But beneath the pain is possibility. Beneath the wreckage is rebirth. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that night you thought would end you was the night everything real began. Key takeaways. Your breaking point is not your ending. It's your awakening. Healing begins the moment you stop pretending you're fine. Every collapse holds a quiet invitation to rebuild differently. Rock bottom is the foundation on which real strength is born. The greatest breakthroughs often rise from your deepest breakdowns. Action step. Tonight, sit with your pain, not to fix it, but to feel it. Write down one thing you've lost, and beside it, write one thing it taught you. Then whisper to yourself, maybe I can try. Because that's where the rebuilding begins. Chapter 4. The Fire of Acceptance. Letting go of why me, and learning to live with what now. There comes a moment in every battle when you stop fighting the storm. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally understood that the storm isn't the enemy. It's the teacher. That moment, quiet, humbling, terrifying, is called acceptance. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or fanfare. It slips in quietly, often after the loudest grief. It doesn't say, everything's fine now. It says, this is what it is, and I will live with it anyway. That's the fire of acceptance, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that refines. It's the flame that burns away resistance, bitterness, and denial, leaving behind something raw, pure, and real, peace. The war within. 4 weeks after her breakup, Sarah replayed the same questions over and over in her mind. How could he leave? What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Her brain became a battlefield between the past and the present. She wasn't just grieving the person. She was grieving the future she thought they'd share. Every text she reread was like reopening a wound. Every memory was a minefield. Friends told her to move on. But what they didn't understand was that she didn't want to move on. She wanted to understand. Until one evening, exhausted from crying, she stood in front of the mirror and whispered, maybe there isn't an answer. Maybe it just is. That sentence cracked something open. She realized she had been trying to rewrite a story that was already over. Acceptance, she learned, wasn't about liking what happened. It was about stopping the fight against what already is. The hardest surrender. When we lose something, a dream, a person, a version of ourselves, our first instinct is resistance. We bargain, analyze, replay, blame, deny. We try to bend reality to match our expectations. But life has a way of reminding us, it doesn't bend. You can resist what happened, or you can release it. The first keeps you chained to suffering. The second sets you free, one breath at a time. Acceptance is not passive. It's the most courageous act of surrender there is. It's looking your pain in the eye and saying, you exist, and I'm not running anymore. That's what makes acceptance a fire. It burns through illusion until only truth remains. The story of the runner. Let's talk about Elijah. For most of his 20s, he ran marathons, not just on the track, but in life. Running from his childhood trauma, running from shame, running from silence. Every mile was a way to outpace the pain. Then came the injury, one wrong step, one torn ligament, and suddenly, his entire identity collapsed. Months of rehab, no races, no trophies, and for the first time in his life, he couldn't run from what hurt. At first, he spiraled, angry, bitter, blaming fate. But in stillness, something unexpected happened. The pain spoke. He realized he wasn't grieving the sport. He was grieving who he thought he had to be loved. In those quiet months, he started journaling. He wrote about his childhood, the father who never said, "I'm proud of you," the silence that felt like rejection. And for the first time, he stopped performing for love and started healing from the lack of it. When he finally returned to running, it wasn't for validation anymore. It was for freedom. "I used to run to escape my pain," he said. "Now I run with it, beside me, not behind me." That's acceptance. Not erasing pain, integrating it. The science of acceptance. Neuroscience tells us that the human brain hates uncertainty. When something painful happens, your brain launches into overdrive trying to solve it, scanning for logic, blame, or meaning. But not every heartbreak can be explained. Sometimes the healing comes not from knowing why, but from letting go of the need to know. Mindfulness psychologists call it radical acceptance, the practice of acknowledging life as it is, without resistance or judgment. It's not resignation. It's recognition. It doesn't mean saying it's okay. It means saying, it happened. Now what can I do with this? When you stop resisting reality, your nervous system calms. Your body stops fighting imaginary battles. Energy that was once spent on denial becomes available for growth. That's the transformation, when pain stops controlling you and starts teaching you. The fire that purifies. Fire doesn't ask permission. It burns what it touches. But what remains after the fire, gold, glass, steel, is stronger, cleaner, unbreakable. Acceptance works the same way. It burns away everything that isn't true. The should-have-beens, the what-ifs, the why-me's, until what's left is simply you. That's the beauty of acceptance. It doesn't rebuild your old self. It reveals your real self. The one who can stand in ashes and still say, "I am still here." Real-life phoenixes. 1. Oprah Winfrey, from shame to strength. As a child, Oprah faced abuse, rejection, and poverty. For years, she carried shame like a shadow, trying to bury it beneath success. But the turning point came when she stopped hiding her story and started owning it. By accepting her pain publicly, she turned it into her superpower, giving millions of people permission to speak their truth too. Her empire wasn't built on perfection, it was built on acceptance. That's why people trust her. She didn't just overcome her pain. She embraced it. 2. Malala Yousafzai, from victim to voice. When Malala was shot for going to school, she could have chosen silence, bitterness, or revenge. But she chose acceptance, not of what happened, but of what she could do with what happened. She said, "They thought the bullets would silence me, but they only made my voice stronger." That's radical acceptance, not condoning injustice, but using pain as power. 3. The unknown teacher. Maria, a schoolteacher, lost her son to addiction. For years, she lived in guilt, blaming herself for not seeing the signs sooner. She joined support groups, but never spoke. Until one day, a new mother walked in, trembling, crying, saying she felt responsible for her own son's relapse. Without thinking, Maria reached for her hand and said, "You didn't fail him. You loved him. And sometimes, love can't fix everything." That moment broke her silence. Today, she speaks to parents across the country about grief and forgiveness. Her healing began when she accepted that some stories don't end with saving. They end with understanding. The bridge from why me to what now. The truth is, you'll never always get answers for why bad things happened. But acceptance is learning to build a bridge anyway. Not across clarity, but across compassion. The question shifts from, why did this happen to me? To what can this teach me? Who can this help? That shift, from victimhood to vision, is the alchemy of acceptance. It turns every scar into a story, every ending into an opening, the quiet kind of strength. Acceptance doesn't make headlines. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It looks like getting out of bed after days of despair. It sounds like saying, "I forgive you," even when the pain hasn't fully healed. It feels like choosing peace over pride. It's the strength that doesn't roar, it hums. The courage that doesn't conquer, it continues. You don't need to force healing. You just need to stop fighting yourself long enough to allow it. The moment of becoming. One evening, Sarah, the woman from earlier, sat on her balcony, the same place she used to sit crying for hours. This time, she watched the sunset, not to escape, but to witness. She realized something profound. Her life hadn't gone back to normal. It had become something deeper, truer, more honest. And in that moment, she smiled. Not because the pain was gone, but because she was finally at peace with its presence. That's acceptance. Not closure, but clarity. Key takeaways. Acceptance is not weakness. It's emotional strength at its highest form. Healing begins when resistance ends. Why me? Keeps you trapped in pain. What now? Moves you toward purpose. Acceptance doesn't erase pain. It transforms your relationship with it. You don't need closure to move forward, only courage to keep walking. Action step. Write down one thing you're still fighting to change. A loss, a regret, a person, a past version of you. Then ask yourself, what if I stopped fighting this and started learning from it? Light a candle, not to forget, but to honor. Let the flame remind you that fire doesn't just destroy. It also purifies. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to let it burn. Chapter 5. The Power Hidden in Pain. How every wound carries wisdom, and how to find it. Pain has always been humanity's most misunderstood teacher. We run from it, bury it, numb it. Yet it's the one thing that's been trying to wake us up all along. Pain isn't punishment. It's information. It's the body saying, pay attention. It's the soul whispering, something must change. Every heartbreak, failure, and loss is a message, written in the language of discomfort. But only those willing to listen can decode its meaning. The truth? Pain never leaves you empty-handed. It always leaves a gift behind, if you have the courage to look for it. The hidden curriculum of pain. You won't find this lesson in any classroom. There's no textbook for emotional collapse. No syllabus for how to rise after your life falls apart. And yet, the people who have walked through fire often carry a kind of gravity. You can feel it when they speak, that quiet steadiness in their tone, the calm in their eyes. They've been shattered, burned, rebuilt, and somehow, they don't flinch anymore. Why? Because they've learned something the comfortable never do. Pain is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of wisdom. The first rule, don't waste your wounds. There's a line from author Richard Rohr that says, if we do not transform our pain, we will most assuredly transmit it. Untransformed pain becomes poison, seeping into relationships, decisions, and the way we see the world. But when we face it consciously, pain becomes power, a refining fire that sharpens clarity and compassion. Think about it. Every great leader, artist, healer, or innovator you admire, they weren't spared pain. They used it. They mined it like gold. The story of the musician who lost his song. There was once a young musician named Aaron. His songs used to come effortlessly, melodies poured out of him like sunlight. Then one day, his father, his biggest fan, died unexpectedly. Aaron stopped playing. Every note hurt. Every lyric felt hollow. Months turned into years. Until one night, unable to sleep, he picked up his guitar and played silence. No chords, no rhythm, just pressing his fingers on the strings, feeling the vibration. And that's when he realized, music wasn't gone. It had just changed shape. It wasn't about joy anymore. It was about truth. He began writing again. This time, not to escape pain but to express it. His first song after the loss was raw, unpolished, real. It went viral, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. His pain became his power. His wound became his witness. The science of post-traumatic growth. Psychologists once believed trauma only broke people. Then came a revolutionary discovery. Post-traumatic growth, PTG. It's the phenomenon where people who endure profound hardship actually report higher levels of strength, wisdom, and appreciation for life than before their trauma. In simple terms, the same fire that destroys also forges. Research shows that pain can expand empathy and emotional intelligence, deepen gratitude, strengthen spiritual connection, increase resilience and creativity, clarify purpose and priorities. So when you say, "I'll never be the same again," the universe might be whispering, "Exactly. That's the point." The mirror test. Here's something most people never realize. Pain is a mirror. It reflects the parts of you that need attention, not judgment. Rejection? It shows where your worth is still tied to approval. Loss. It reveals where your identity was built on something temporary. Failure? It exposes where your faith in yourself is conditional. When you stop seeing pain as an enemy, it becomes a compass, pointing you back to the parts of yourself that still need love. Every tear, every ache, every unanswered prayer, it's life saying, this part of you still wants to be healed. The alchemy of pain. Alchemy was the ancient art of turning base metals into gold. But the real alchemy, the emotional kind, happens inside the human heart. When you sit with pain instead of running, something miraculous happens. You begin to extract meaning from it. You distill lessons from suffering. You turn agony into awareness. That's emotional alchemy. The process of saying, "This broke me, yes, but it also built me." Real-life alchemists. 1. J.K. Rowling. Rejection as refinement. Before Harry Potter changed the world, Rowling was a single mother living on welfare. 12 publishers rejected her manuscript. 12 doors slammed shut. But pain became her mentor. She said, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." Her pain stripped her ego and sharpened her storytelling, giving her the emotional depth that millions would later feel through her characters. 2. Nelson Mandela. Injustice as insight. Mandela spent 27 years in prison. Most people would emerge bitter. He came out compassionate. He said, "As I walked out of the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness behind, I'd still be in prison." His suffering gave him a clarity no victory could have. He didn't just fight oppression, he understood the oppressor. That's the kind of wisdom only pain can teach. 3. The everyday warrior. A nurse who holds the hand of a dying patient and whispers comfort because she knows what loss feels like. A teacher who spots a struggling student and sees herself in that child's eyes. A father who, after losing everything, builds again, slower, steadier, wiser. They may not have fame or fortune, but they are walking embodiments of transformed pain. Their power is quiet, but it moves the world forward. The extraction process. So, how do you turn pain into power? Step 1. Feel it fully. Don't rush to move on. Let yourself feel what you're afraid to feel. Grief, rage, loneliness. Pain only transforms when it's faced, not avoided. Step 2. Ask the right question. Not, "Why did this happen?" but "What is this trying to teach me?" Step 3. Reframe the narrative. Instead of "This ruined me," try "This revealed me." Instead of "I lost everything," say, "I discovered what truly matters." Step 4. Share it. Pain kept private stagnates. Pain shared becomes medicine for you and for others. The wisdom hidden in every wound. Every scar carries a story, and within that story lies a lesson. Heartbreak teaches empathy. You learn to love deeper, not just harder. Failure teaches humility. You stop performing and start creating from truth. Loss teaches presence. You stop taking moments for granted. Loneliness teaches self-connection. You realize peace isn't found in others, it's built within. That's the paradox. The things that once shattered you become the things that shape you. The wounds that weaken you become the wells of your wisdom. The gift of perspective. If you zoom out far enough, pain always makes sense in hindsight. Every detour, delay, and heartbreak turns out to be a redirection, a necessary pruning of the false to make space for what's real. You begin to see the divine architecture of it all. That rejection protected you. That ending awakened you. That failure trained you. And when you finally see that, when you truly see it, pain no longer feels like punishment. It feels like preparation. A letter to your past self. Dear me, I know you hated those nights. The ones where everything felt unfair and endless. You thought it was breaking you, didn't you? But look at you now. Wiser, kinder, stronger. That pain didn't destroy you. It redesigned you. You learned to walk through fire barefoot and still find beauty in the ashes. You didn't lose yourself. You found the parts that can never be taken again. Key takeaways. Pain is not punishment, it's information. Every wound holds wisdom when you stop running from it. Suffering becomes strength when it's understood, not avoided. Transformation begins when you choose meaning over misery. The power hidden in pain is not what it takes, it's what it teaches. Reflection exercise. Think of the greatest pain you've ever endured. Ask yourself, what did it teach me? How did it shape who I am today? What power did it unlock within me that I didn't know existed? Write those lessons down. That's not your weakness. That's your curriculum. Pain is the universe's most personal classroom. And those who survive it are not just students. They are alchemists, turning darkness into dawn. Chapter 6. Scars that speak. Turning emotional wounds into messages of hope and resilience. There's a silence that follows every storm. When the chaos fades, when the tears have dried, when the world stops watching, you're left with the quiet hum of your own heartbeat. You look at the damage. You look at what's left. And somewhere, beneath the ashes, you notice something strange. You're still here. And that stillness, that quiet survival, begins to speak. Scars are not the end of the story. They are the voice of everything you've lived through. Proof that the wound is no longer bleeding, but teaching. Every scar says, I've been broken, but I've also rebuilt. The language of scars. You can tell a lot about a person by the scars they carry. Not the ones on their skin, but the invisible ones that shape how they move through the world. There's the person who listens deeply because they know what it feels like to go unheard. The one who comforts others because they remember what it was like to cry alone. The one who forgives easily, not because they're weak, but because they've learned that bitterness chains the soul tighter than any betrayal ever could. Scars have their own language. They don't speak in words. They speak in compassion, presence, and purpose. Pain that has been silenced for too long eventually finds a way to serve. The day your wound found its voice. Everyone has that one turning point. That quiet moment when your story shifts from, why me, to maybe this happened for me. It's rarely cinematic. It's often ordinary, standing in line at the grocery store, walking past a stranger, scrolling through an old photo. But something inside clicks. You see your pain from the outside, maybe for the first time. And suddenly, the weight you carried for so long becomes lighter, not because it's gone, but because it finally means something. That's the day your wound starts to speak. When the healed become healers. Let me tell you about Maya. She grew up in a house filled with shouting, doors slammed, glass shattered, love twisted into something sharp. For years, she thought her purpose was to escape it, to build a life so different that she'd never have to look back. And she did, a successful job, an apartment that smelled like lavender and silence, a life that looked perfect from the outside. But peace built on avoidance never lasts. Her panic attacks began quietly, first in traffic, then in crowded rooms, then even in her own bed. One day, exhausted, she joined a support group for trauma survivors. She didn't speak. She just listened. And as she listened, she realized something. Everyone there was carrying the same invisible ache. The next week, she spoke. Just once. She said, I thought escaping would heal me. But maybe healing means facing what I ran from. Years later, Maya became a counselor. Her sessions aren't clinical, they're sacred. She doesn't just treat pain, she understands it. Her clients often say, you make me feel seen. That's what happens when scars learn to speak. They don't lecture, they connect. The difference between a wound and a scar. A wound bleeds. A scar breathes. A wound cries, why me? A scar whispers, try me. A wound hurts when touched. A scar reminds you where healing began. Healing isn't about erasing the mark. It's about reclaiming its meaning. That's the moment your story turns from survival to service. The artist who painted his pain. Vincent van Gogh once wrote, what would life be if we had no courage to attempt anything? He painted in agony. Loneliness and rejection haunted him, yet he poured those shadows into color. Each brushstroke was a confession, each canvas a cry for connection. His art wasn't popular in his lifetime. People didn't understand it. But decades later, millions would stand before Starry Night and weep, not just because it was beautiful, but because it felt like being human. His scars spoke across centuries. They told us that beauty can rise from madness, that the soul's chaos can create light. The ripple effect of one honest story. Your pain doesn't need to be poetic or perfect to matter. You don't need to write a book, start a foundation, or stand on a stage. Sometimes, the most powerful way your scars speak is through one simple sentence. I've been there. Do you know what that sentence does? It bridges worlds. It tells someone drowning that they're not alone in the ocean. A single honest story can become someone else's lifeline. That's the ripple effect of authenticity. You never know whose survival depends on your willingness to tell the truth. When pain becomes purpose, when you begin to share what once silenced you, something inside you shifts. You stop being defined by what happened to you. You start being defined by what you do with it. That's the essence of transformation. Pain becomes purpose, scars become story, and story becomes strength for others. Let's look at a few who embodied this truth. 1. Malala Yousafzai, the wound that spoke for millions. A girl from Pakistan who was shot for wanting an education. Most would have hidden, retreated, disappeared. But Malala turned her scar into a microphone for millions of silenced girls around the world. Her wound said, "You tried to stop me from learning. But now, I'll teach the world." 2. Viktor Frankl, meaning beyond misery. A psychiatrist who lost his entire family in the Holocaust. He survived Auschwitz, not by ignoring pain, but by finding meaning inside it. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning, teaching that even in suffering, we retain the freedom to choose our response. His scars didn't just speak, they sang with wisdom that reshaped psychology itself. 3. The girl who survived herself. Not famous, not known, but she exists in every crowd. The one who battled depression and now listens without judgment. The one who faced addiction and now mentors quietly in a local center. The one who lost a child and now volunteers at the hospital NICU, holding tiny hands with infinite grace. These are the unsung saints of humanity. Their scars are silent sermons, proof that healing is contagious. The sacred responsibility of survival. When you've made it through something that should have destroyed you, life gives you a choice. You can hide the scars, or you can use them, because somewhere out there, someone is walking through the exact fire you survived, and they need to see your light through the smoke. This is the sacred responsibility of the healed. To return to the battlefield, not to fight, but to guide. Your pain prepared you for that. Your survival equipped you for that, letting your scars speak. So, how do you let your scars speak, without fear, shame, or performance? 1. Own your story. Don't edit it for comfort or comparison. Tell it as it is, raw, real yours. Power lies in truth, not polish. 2. Speak from the scar, not the wound. Wait until you've healed enough that your words don't bleed on others. Wisdom comes from reflection, not reaction. 3. Focus on resonance, not reaction. You're not here to impress. You're here to connect. The right people will hear what they're ready to hear. 4. Let vulnerability be your microphone. Authenticity doesn't need amplification. It carries its own echo. Your scars are not signs of weakness. They are the signatures of survival. The proof that even when life burned everything to the ground, something indestructible remained, you. If pain was the fire, your scars are the gold veins running through the ashes. They shimmer in the light not because they're flawless, but because they're real. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, highlighting the cracks instead of hiding them. The belief is simple. The object becomes more beautiful because it was broken. You are living kintsugi. Your cracks are not your curse, they're your character. The legacy of a scar that spoke. When people remember you someday, it won't be for how perfect you were. It'll be for how human you were. For the moments you said, "I don't have it all together," and someone whispered, "Me neither." For the times you walked through darkness and still offered light. That's legacy, not what you built, but what you became, and what you allowed your pain to teach the world. Key takeaways. Scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof of healing. When you share your story, you give others permission to heal too. Your pain becomes power when it turns into purpose. Speak from your scars, not your wounds. The world doesn't need perfect people, it needs honest ones. Reflection challenge. Think of a painful experience that shaped you. Ask yourself, what did this teach me about strength, empathy, or love? Who could benefit from hearing what I've learned? How can I share this story, even quietly, to help another person rise? Write one small way your scars could speak today, a message, a post, a conversation, a gesture. Because the world doesn't just heal from medicine, it heals from meaning. Chapter 7. Rising Through Resilience. How Ordinary People Rebuild Extraordinary Lives After Devastation. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But what they never tell you is that the process of becoming strong often feels like dying first. Because rising through resilience isn't a montage of victories. It's a slow, brutal resurrection. It's learning how to rebuild when your soul feels like dust. It's discovering that survival isn't just about breathing again. It's about believing again. This chapter isn't about those who never fell. It's about those who fell so hard they forgot what standing felt like, and still somehow stood anyway. The quiet after the collapse. There's a strange silence that comes after your world collapses. It's not peace. It's numbness. The absence of noise, of meaning, of motion. You wake up in the wreckage, surrounded by memories that sting and futures that seem erased. Friends tell you to stay strong. Motivational quotes flood your feed. But none of it touches the ache that lives deep inside your ribs. That hollow where certainty used to be. Resilience begins in that hollow. Not with a roar, but with a whisper. I can't stay here forever. You don't know how you'll move forward, or even if you can. You just know that staying broken isn't an option. And that realization, that faint pulse of will, is the first spark of strength returning. The anatomy of rising. Resilience isn't one grand act of courage. It's 1,000 small decisions that no one sees. It's showing up when the world has stopped expecting you to. It's making your bed when you don't have the energy to live the day. It's answering the phone again. It's going for a walk when every cell in your body wants to stay curled in grief. That's resilience, the slow rebuild, the daily rebellion against despair. Because healing isn't about forgetting what broke you. It's about learning to build with the pieces that remain. Think of gold. How in Japanese kintsugi, broken pottery is repaired with veins of gold, making the cracks part of its beauty, not a flaw to hide. That's what resilience does to the human spirit. It turns the scars into design. It turns the break into brilliance. The ordinary phoenixes. Let me tell you about Aisha. She was 27 when everything she built burned down, literally. A short circuit in her small art studio turned her dreams to ashes overnight. Years of savings, every painting, every sketch, gone. For months, she didn't touch a brush. She worked part-time jobs, haunted by the scent of smoke that clung to her memory. But one night, she sat at her kitchen table with a cheap set of colors and painted a single streak of gold over a black canvas. She titled it, Rebirth. That painting went viral. Today, Aisha runs art therapy workshops for trauma survivors. Every participant paints one thing, a golden line across the darkness. That's resilience. Not bouncing back, but being reborn different. Rising through pain, not above it. Or take Marcus, a father of 2 who lost his job of 15 years during an economic crash. He told me once, I didn't know how to tell my kids that I was scared too. For a while, he drifted, applying for anything, hiding his fear behind tired smiles. Then one day, instead of job searching, he started volunteering at a community shelter. He didn't plan it. He just wanted to feel useful again. That volunteer work opened a door to something he never expected, social entrepreneurship. Today, Marcus runs a local foundation that employs the unemployed. His dream was born from what destroyed him. And that's the paradox of resilience. Sometimes your purpose is buried beneath the rubble you're afraid to dig through. When resilience looks like rest, we often mistake resilience for constant motion. But sometimes, it's stillness that saves you. Sometimes resilience looks like sleep. Like saying no to the world so you can say yes to yourself later. Sometimes it's taking time to feel the grief fully. To cry the tears you've been holding back behind. I'm fine. True strength isn't in how fast you rebuild. It's in how deeply you allow yourself to heal before rebuilding. Because if you rush your comeback, you end up carrying the same broken patterns into your next chapter. You can't construct a new life on foundations still cracked from the last collapse. So rest, recover, reset. That pause is not weakness. It's the gathering of force before the next rise. The science of survival. Psychologists call it post-traumatic growth. The phenomenon where people emerge from trauma not weaker, but stronger, with deeper compassion, perspective, and gratitude for life. It's not the trauma that strengthens you. It's the meaning you create from it. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps of World War II, wrote that those who found purpose in their suffering were the ones most likely to survive it. That truth hasn't changed. Pain alone doesn't transform you. It's your response to pain that does. You can let it define you or refine you. You can let it imprison you or empower you. You can let it become your excuse or your edge. Resilience is a choice, repeated until it becomes your character. The rebuild. Every rise starts with a decision. I am not done yet. Maybe you've lost someone you loved. Maybe you've lost yourself. Maybe your faith, your career, your body, your dream, all collapsed in your hands. But here you are, still breathing. And that means there's still clay left in your hands to mold. Rebuilding doesn't mean returning to what was. It means creating what could be from who you've become. Start small. One promise to yourself. One new habit. One honest conversation. One morning you refuse to stay in bed. And little by little, those small acts become momentum. And momentum becomes power. Until one day, you realize you're not surviving anymore. You're living. Stories written in scars. Every scar tells a story of resilience. Not perfection, but persistence. The mother who rebuilt her life after divorce. The soldier who learned to walk again after losing a leg. The student who failed twice, only to start a business out of his failures. The addict who became a counselor. The orphan who became a mentor. They didn't erase their pain, they redeemed it. They used their wounds as roadmaps to guide others out of their own darkness. That's the beauty of resilience. It doesn't just save you. It becomes a lifeline for others watching you rise. The rise within you. Maybe you don't feel resilient right now. Maybe you're reading this in the middle of your breakdown, and the word rise feels too heavy to believe. That's okay. Resilience doesn't demand confidence, only continuation. You don't have to see the light to move toward it. You just have to take the next small step in its direction. One day, you'll look back and realize every tear watered the strength that grew inside you. Every fall taught you how to fly lower next time and land softer. Every heartbreak broke you open enough for light to enter. You were never just surviving. You were becoming. The lesson: resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about being unshakable, because you've already been broken, and you know what it takes to rise again. It's the quiet courage to rebuild when no one's watching. It's the faith that whispers, this pain won't last forever. It's the relentless heartbeat of hope that keeps you moving forward, even when everything still hurts. So, if you're standing in the ruins right now, don't rush to escape them. Pick up a single piece of your past and start building something new from it. Because one day, someone will look at your scars and find the courage to survive their own. And that's when you'll realize you didn't just rise for yourself. You rose to remind the world that healing is possible. Rising through resilience isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your rebuilding. The moment when pain starts turning into power and wounds start becoming wisdom. Because the truth is simple and yet extraordinary. You were never meant to stay broken. You were meant to rise. Again, and again, and again. Chapter 8. The Alchemy of Suffering. Transforming bitterness into breakthrough. The art of emotional alchemy. There's a moment in every survivor's story when the pain stops being the enemy and becomes the teacher. It's quiet, subtle. You don't even notice when it happens. One day, you wake up and realize you're no longer fighting your suffering. You're listening to it. And for the first time, it starts to make sense. This is the turning point. The moment pain begins to transform. The moment you become an alchemist of your own life. Because that's what emotional alchemy truly is. Turning the lead of your suffering into the gold of strength, compassion, and wisdom. It's not magic. It's mastery. The mastery of meaning. The science and soul of alchemy. In ancient times, alchemists believed they could turn base metals into gold. But the truth, the secret buried inside their metaphors, was never about metal. It was about man. It was about transforming the inner elements. Fear into courage, loss into love, grief into growth. It was about refining the soul through the furnace of suffering until what remained was pure, unbreakable light. Pain is the fire that begins this purification. But only if you stay in the fire long enough to let it change you. See, most people run from pain. They numb it, drown it, distract it, hide it. But what you run from rules you. What you face frees you. When you stop running and turn toward the fire, that's when the alchemy begins. Stage 1. The burn, facing the fire. Every transformation begins with the burn. That raw, blistering season when everything hurts and nothing feels right. The betrayal, the failure, the loss. The silence after someone leaves. It's the stage where pain feels endless, where you keep asking, why me? And the universe stays quiet. But here's the truth. Pain is not your punishment. It's your purification. It burns away illusions about who you thought you were, what you thought you needed, and where you thought you were headed. It strips away everything fake until only the truth remains. It's brutal. It's lonely. And yet, it's necessary. Because only the real you can rise from the ashes. Stage 2. The breakdown of meaning. When you're in the middle of suffering, everything loses meaning. The things that once mattered suddenly feel shallow. The world keeps spinning, but you feel detached, like an outsider watching from a distance. This breakdown of meaning isn't the end of your story. It's the empty page before a new chapter. You're being invited to rewrite what life means to you, from the inside out. Psychologists call this cognitive restructuring, but spiritual teachers call it rebirth. Both mean the same thing. You're being rebuilt from the ruins of your old beliefs. Your suffering cracks open the old definitions of happiness, success, and worth, so you can finally build new ones that actually fit your soul. Stage 3. The shift from why me to what for. The true alchemy happens in this shift. When your mind stops asking, why did this happen to me? And starts asking, what is this trying to teach me? That single question transforms suffering into strength. Because why me? Keeps you trapped in victimhood. But what for? Gives your pain a purpose. Every person who ever turned tragedy into triumph made this shift. Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison, said he emerged not with bitterness, but with clarity. Malala Yousafzai turned the bullet meant to silence her into a voice for millions. Nick Vujicic, born without limbs, became a global speaker on self-worth and faith. These people didn't escape their suffering. They refined it. They turned it into light. Stage 4. The melting, letting the heart break open. You cannot alchemize pain while your heart is locked behind armor. Transformation demands vulnerability. When you let yourself truly feel, not just analyze, the pain, you melt the bitterness that has hardened inside you. Tears are not weakness. They're the release valve of the soul. Every tear shed in truth is a drop of poison leaving your system. Feelings that are faced heal. Feelings that are avoided rot. Let yourself break open. It's the only way light can enter. Stage 5. The reforging, creating from the wound. There comes a moment when the pain that once crushed you becomes the fuel that drives you. You start creating from it. Writing, speaking, helping, building, loving differently. You turn your suffering into service, your heartbreak into art, your losses into lessons. And in doing so, you realize something extraordinary. That what once hurt you most has become the foundation of your greatest purpose. Every healer was once wounded. Every teacher was once lost. Every warrior was once broken. You are not meant to escape your pain. You are meant to evolve through it. Stories of transformation. Let me tell you about Rena. She lost her husband in a car accident when she was 29. Grief devoured her days. She barely ate, barely spoke. One day, she found her late husband's old guitar in the closet. Strings dusty, case worn. For some reason, she picked it up. She didn't know how to play, but she strummed anyway. Softly, clumsily, until the sound became a kind of prayer. Weeks turned into months. Music became her therapy. She began writing songs, not to perform, but to heal. Years later, one of her songs, The Space Between, went viral for its raw honesty about grief. Today, Rena runs music therapy programs for widows and trauma survivors. Her pain became her power. Her suffering became her service. That's alchemy. Then there's David, a man who spent a decade addicted to heroin. He told me once, I thought I'd never deserve to live again. But my rock bottom became the place I started building. After rehab, he began volunteering at a recovery center, cleaning floors, making coffee. He had nothing but humility. But that humility became his greatest teacher. Today, David runs that same center. And when new addicts walk in, shaking, ashamed, he looks them in the eye and says, I know, I was you, and you can rise too. You see, pain doesn't make you powerful. Healing does. But healing begins the moment you stop hiding your pain and start using it. The gold in the wounds. In kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, the cracks aren't hidden, they're illuminated. Because the damage isn't shameful, it's sacred. It tells the story of survival. Your heart works the same way. The cracks in you are not flaws. They're entry points for grace. The light doesn't avoid them. It pours through them. That's what transformation looks like. Not erasing the past, but illuminating it. Not pretending you were never broken, but showing the beauty in the repair. The truth about bitterness. Bitterness is what happens when pain is left unprocessed. It's pain that turned to poison because it was never allowed to breathe. The antidote to bitterness isn't revenge. It's meaning. It's love. It's service. When you turn inward long enough to extract the wisdom from your suffering, you disarm it. It no longer controls you. It creates you. The same fire that once burned your life down becomes the fire that lights your new path, becoming the alchemist. So, how do you begin this alchemy? 1. Face the fire. Stop running. Feel it. Acknowledge what hurts. Truth is the first ingredient of transformation. 2. Ask different questions. Replace why me with what for. Seek meaning, not misery. 3. Forgive. Yourself. Others. Life itself. Forgiveness is the release that frees your energy for growth. 4. Create. Turn your emotion into expression. Write, paint, move, build. Creation is the highest form of healing. 5. Share. Don't hide your story. When you share it, it becomes a lantern for someone else in the dark. The lesson: pain is inevitable. But suffering, staying trapped inside that pain, is optional. You can choose to turn it into poison or into power. You can choose to let it make you bitter or better. Every scar you carry is a symbol of alchemy. Proof that what tried to destroy you became the very thing that refined you. That's what it means to turn pain into power. To transform not by avoiding the fire, but by walking through it and coming out gold. So, if you're standing in the flames right now, don't rush to escape them. Breathe. Listen. Learn. Because deep inside your suffering is the seed of the strength you've been searching for. And when you finally rise, not untouched, but transformed, you'll understand why it all had to happen. Why it all had to burn. Because what was burning all along wasn't you. It was everything you were never meant to be. Chapter 9. The Healing Within. The quiet strength found in self-compassion, forgiveness, and presence. There comes a moment, after the storms, when the silence feels unfamiliar. You've fought, you've broken, you've burned, you've rebuilt, and now, there's just stillness. No lightning, no thunder, no drama, just the sound of your own breath. That's when true healing begins. Not in the noise of survival, but in the quiet of surrender. Because healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or applause. It whispers. It unfolds gently, like dawn after a long night. And this chapter, this moment of your journey, isn't about fighting anymore. It's about feeling. It's about learning the most sacred truth of all. That peace isn't found in what you fix outside. It's what you finally forgive inside. The quiet after the fire. After every great storm, nature pauses. The earth, once wild and chaotic, exhales. The air feels cleaner. The light, softer. You're that earth now. You've endured the fire, the floods, the breaking. And now you stand in the stillness that follows. It can feel unsettling, almost empty, because you've been in survival mode for so long. But healing requires stillness. It asks you to stop chasing and simply be. To sit with your scars without needing to explain them. To hold your heart without trying to fix it. To let yourself breathe again, after years of holding it all in. Self-compassion, the first breath of healing. Most of us were taught how to be strong, but not how to be soft with ourselves. We know how to push, how to endure, how to keep going. But few of us know how to sit with our pain without judging it. Self-compassion isn't self-pity. It's not about making excuses for your mistakes. It's about understanding them and understanding you. It's the voice that says, of course you're tired. You've carried so much. Of course you're scared. You've been hurt before. But you're still here, and that means something. Self-compassion is how the heart relearns to trust itself. Because healing isn't possible when you're still at war with your own reflection. The war within. There's a saying, if you talk to your friends the way you talk to yourself, would you still have any? Most of us live with an inner critic. A relentless voice that calls us unworthy, unlovable, or not enough. That voice grows loud in pain. It feeds on guilt and shame. It tells you, you should have known better. You're too broken to be happy. You'll never be the same again. But that voice isn't truth. It's trauma talking. It's fear trying to protect you from being hurt again. And the only way to silence it isn't by fighting, but by meeting it with compassion. Because compassion disarms what shame tries to control. It tells your inner critic, you can rest now. I'm safe to love again. And that love, quiet, patient, unconditional, is where the real healing begins. Forgiveness, the medicine for the soul. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's not about saying what happened was okay. It's about releasing yourself from the chain that keeps you tied to it. Every time you replay the pain, you relive it. Every time you hold on to anger, you keep drinking the poison, hoping someone else will hurt. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's emotional sovereignty. The decision to stop letting the past decide your peace. You forgive because you deserve freedom, not because they deserve a pardon. And sometimes, the hardest person to forgive is yourself. The mirror moment. Stand in front of a mirror and look into your own eyes. Really look. Not the version of you that performs, hides, or pretends, but the one behind the eyes. See the person who tried, who loved, who fell, who broke, who kept showing up. Tell them, I forgive you for not knowing. I forgive you for staying too long. I forgive you for falling apart. I forgive you for surviving the only way you knew how. You might cry. You might feel silly. But those tears are sacred. Because in that moment, that holy, human moment, you are no longer the wound. You are the healer. The power of presence. Healing can't happen in the past. And it can't happen in the future. It only happens now. Pain lives in memory. Anxiety lives in imagination. But peace lives in presence. Presence isn't about controlling your thoughts. It's about witnessing them. It's sitting in silence and realizing you are not your pain. You are the awareness that sees it. You are the calm beneath the chaos. The observer behind the noise. The sky that holds every storm, without ever being destroyed by it. When you begin to live from that place, you stop identifying with your suffering. You start living as the light that watches it pass. The healing habits. Healing isn't a one-time miracle. It's a daily practice, quiet, gentle, intentional. Here are the habits that turn healing into a way of life. 1. Silence. Spend time alone. Not scrolling, not escaping, just being. The garden of healing. Healing is like tending to a garden. At first, it's just dirt and debris. You pull out the weeds of old pain, water the soil with tears, and plant seeds of self-love. For a while, it looks like nothing's happening. But beneath the surface, roots are forming, strong, invisible, sacred. Then one day, without warning, you notice new life. You smile again without forcing it. You breathe deeply without guilt. You find beauty in small things, the morning light, a song, the smell of rain. That's the garden of healing. It grows not from perfection, but from patience. Stories of the quiet healers. Maria was a nurse who lost her son in a tragic accident. For years, she couldn't bear to enter the hospital again. One day, a neighbor's child fell and broke his arm outside her home. Instinctively, Maria ran to help. Her hands, the same ones that once held her dying son, became steady again. Later that night, she wept, not from grief, but from grace. That act of service became her healing. Today, she runs a grief support group for parents who've lost children. Arjun, a businessman who went bankrupt at 45, spent years drowning in shame. One morning, while walking past a park, he saw a young boy selling lemonade and stopped to talk. He realized he saw himself in that boy, hopeful, determined, full of dreams. That conversation inspired him to start mentoring young entrepreneurs. He didn't rebuild his wealth overnight, but he rebuilt something far greater, his worth. Healing, you see, isn't about erasing the pain. It's about discovering what beauty can still grow from it. The truth about wholeness. You don't have to be fully healed to live fully. You don't have to be free of pain to experience joy. You don't have to be fixed to be worthy of love. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means integration. It means holding your scars and your dreams in the same hands and saying, both belong. The healed version of you isn't flawless. It's real. It knows heartbreak and hope can coexist. It knows strength isn't the absence of wounds. It's the courage to keep showing them sunlight. The gentle revolution. You've spent chapters learning to fight, to rise, to burn brighter. But this is the chapter that teaches you to rest. To know that stillness is not weakness. That gentleness is not surrender. That your heart, after everything, still knows how to love, how to trust, how to begin again. Healing is not a destination, it's a daily homecoming. It's remembering, over and over, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And every time you choose love over resentment, peace over chaos, forgiveness over fury, you reclaim another piece of yourself. That's what healing truly is. The slow, sacred act of becoming whole again. Key takeaways. Healing happens in stillness, not in striving. Self-compassion is the root of transformation. It allows forgiveness to grow. Forgiveness isn't about others. It's about freeing your heart. Presence anchors you to peace. The now is where true recovery begins. Wholeness isn't about being perfect. It's about accepting your scars as part of your story. Action step/reflection. Find a mirror, light a candle, and spend 2 minutes just looking at yourself. Breathe deeply. Say softly, I forgive you. I am proud of you. I love you. Let it feel awkward. Let it feel strange, but say it anyway. Because healing begins the moment you start speaking to yourself with love. Chapter 10. Purpose in the Pain. How your struggle becomes your story, and your story becomes someone else's survival guide. Every scar has a story. Every tear once had a reason. And every pain you've carried, the kind that tore you apart, the kind that no one saw, was never wasted. Because pain, when faced with courage, transforms. It becomes purpose. There's a sacred alchemy that happens when you stop asking why me and start asking what now. That shift, from victim to vessel, from wounded to warrior, is where your story begins to serve. This chapter is not about suffering anymore. It's about meaning. It's about discovering that what once broke you now has the power to build others. The birthplace of purpose. Purpose doesn't arrive in moments of comfort. It's born in the fires of pain, in the nights you thought you'd never survive. Because purpose doesn't come from what you know. It comes from what you've endured. It's shaped by every setback, every scar, every silent battle you've fought behind closed doors. Think of the people who've changed the world, not in fame, but in impact. Their light didn't come from a life without shadows. It came because they walked through the dark and decided to carry a lamp for others, turning wounds into wisdom. When you stop hiding your pain, it turns into wisdom. When you share that wisdom, it becomes service. That's the secret of transformation. The very thing that once hurt you becomes the medicine you offer the world. You might not see it yet, but someone out there needs your story. They need to hear how you survived, how you healed, how you learned to breathe again. Because when you speak your truth, you give others permission to do the same. When you say, I've been there too, you bridge the gap between despair and hope. Your story becomes a lifeline, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Pain is the compass. Every struggle you faced carried a message. Every heartbreak redirected you toward truth. Every loss stripped away illusion to reveal what truly matters. Pain has always been a compass pointing you home, to who you were meant to be, to what you were born to do. You didn't lose your path when you fell. You found your direction in the fall. Because sometimes life has to break what's fake, so the real you can finally rise. The story that saves. Lila was 29 when she lost everything. Her marriage, her job, her confidence. She spent months in silence, too ashamed to speak. Then one night, she wrote her pain into poetry. Those words found their way online, raw, unfiltered, real. Soon, messages began pouring in from strangers saying, your story sounds like mine. Because of your words, I didn't give up. Today, Lila runs writing workshops for women recovering from heartbreak. She didn't plan it. She just showed up, with honesty. Her wound became her work. Her pain became her purpose. That's how it always happens. Not with a plan, but with a spark. Your message is hidden in your mess. There's an old saying. The mess you fear to share becomes the message that heals. The things you think disqualify you, your mistakes, your failures, your grief, are the very things that make you relatable. Because people don't connect with perfection. They connect with truth. They connect with vulnerability, authenticity, humanity. So tell your story, not when it's pretty, but when it's true. Speak from the scar, not the wound. Share from healing, not from hurting. And watch how your honesty becomes someone else's hope. The ripple effect. You might never know whose life your story will touch. You might never see the ripple it creates. But every time you choose to turn pain into purpose, you light a torch in the dark. Someone miles away might find that light when they need it most. Someone sitting in silence might breathe again because you dared to speak. That's the magic of purpose. It multiplies when shared. And it doesn't require a stage, a camera, or a crowd. It only requires your heart. The anatomy of purpose. There are 3 stages to discovering purpose through pain. 1. The breaking awareness. You realize something is missing. The old life no longer fits. The illusion shatters. This is where pain cracks the shell so truth can enter. 2. The healing acceptance. You stop fighting what happened. You begin to listen, to learn, to release. You find strength in the surrender. 3. The rising alignment. You turn your scars into service. You use your story to lift, guide, teach, or inspire. You become a vessel of meaning, not despite the pain, but because of it. That's the full circle of growth. From suffering to understanding, from understanding to action. Purpose isn't always loud. Sometimes, purpose whispers. It's not always a grand mission or a public movement. Sometimes it's the teacher who listens when a student feels unseen. The friend who answers a late-night call. The mother who chooses gentleness over anger. The artist who paints their pain into beauty. Purpose lives in every act of love born from hurt. Every quiet choice to show up with more empathy. Because you remember what it felt like when no one did. The bridge of empathy. Your pain trained you to see differently. You notice what others overlook. You understand what others fear. You feel deeper because you've been deep. That sensitivity is not a weakness. It's your superpower. It's how you connect, how you create, how you lead. Because the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs healed people. People who've walked through darkness and still choose light. When purpose meets peace. Purpose doesn't erase pain, it redeems it. It gives the suffering a why. It turns chaos into clarity, wounds into wisdom, and endurance into empathy. And when you finally see the pattern, when you realize that every heartbreak, every detour, every dark night was leading you to this point, you stop resenting the pain. You start thanking it. You whisper, if I hadn't fallen there, I wouldn't be standing here. That's not just healing. That's awakening. A note to the one still hurting. If you're reading this and you're still in the middle of your storm, this chapter is not asking you to rush your healing. You don't have to find purpose right away. You don't have to turn your pain into poetry before you've even stopped bleeding. Just hold on to this truth. One day, what now feels unbearable will become your greatest offering. One day, you'll meet someone who's standing where you once stood, and you'll say, I know what that feels like. And they'll look at you with tears in their eyes and whisper, you have no idea how much that helps. And in that sacred moment, you'll understand why it all had to happen. Key takeaways. Pain becomes purpose when you stop hiding it and start using it. Your story has power, even if it's still being written. Purpose doesn't erase pain, it gives it meaning. Empathy, born from suffering, is the bridge that connects hearts. The world doesn't need your perfection, it needs your truth. Reflection exercise. Write a letter titled The Gift in My Pain. List every struggle you've faced, and next to it, write what it taught you. Look at that list and whisper, this is where my purpose lives. Chapter 11. Becoming the light you needed. There comes a moment in every healing journey when you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And you start whispering, maybe this happened for me, so I could help someone else survive it. That shift, that sacred moment of realization, is when pain becomes purpose. It's when you step out of the shadows not as the wounded, but as the healer. Not as the broken, but as the light. The echo of darkness. There was a woman named Layla. Years ago, she used to wake up every morning with the weight of the world sitting on her chest. Her husband had walked away without explanation, leaving behind a note that said only, I can't do this anymore. She stopped believing in people. She stopped believing in mornings. Days turned to months. She would stand by her window and watch other people laugh. Parents walking their kids to school, couples sharing coffee, joggers chasing the sunrise, and wonder, how do they keep living when everything inside you has died? One day, Layla walked past a local shelter. She saw a young girl sitting on the steps, crying, maybe 16, shivering, her hands bruised from the cold. Layla hesitated. For a long minute, she almost kept walking. But then, she saw her younger self in that girl. The same lost eyes, the same quiet hopelessness. Layla sat beside her and said nothing. Just sat. After a few minutes, the girl whispered, "No one ever stays." And Layla said, softly, "Then I'll be the first." That day changed Layla's life. She didn't rescue that girl. She rescued herself. Because in helping her heal, she found pieces of her own heart she thought were gone forever. The turning point. Pain isolates you. It makes you feel like your suffering is singular, that no one else could possibly understand. But healing connects you. It opens your eyes to how universal human struggle really is. The truth is, every person you meet is carrying something invisible. The man smiling at the grocery counter? Maybe he's drowning in debt. The woman giving a speech on confidence? Maybe she cried in her car before walking in. The friend who always makes others laugh? Maybe humor is her armor. Once you've been to rock bottom, you begin to see people differently. You see their quiet tremors. You feel their unspoken pain. And suddenly, your scars aren't just reminders of what broke you. They're instructions on how to love people better. Because the light you needed once, someone else needs right now. Becoming the mirror. There's a story about a boy who grew up being told he'd never amount to anything. His teachers called him a failure. His father called him weak. His classmates laughed at his stutter. Years later, that boy became a speech coach for children who couldn't find their voice. When asked why, he said, "Because I remember what silence felt like." That's what becoming the light looks like. You don't erase your past. You redeem it. You take what hurt you, and you use it to guide others who are still lost in the dark. Every healed person becomes a mirror, reflecting back hope to those who've forgotten what it looks like. The ripple effect. Healing doesn't just end with you. It creates ripples, quiet, invisible waves that reach people you may never even meet. You smile at a stranger who's having the worst day of their life. You share your story, and someone halfway across the world listens and decides not to give up that night. You forgive the person who hurt you, and it changes the way your children learn to love. That's how humanity heals, one ripple at a time. You might not see the difference you're making. You might think your kindness goes unnoticed. But somewhere, somehow, the universe is whispering, "Keep shining." Someone needs your light to find their way home. The cost of light. Becoming the light isn't easy. It means facing what once destroyed you and choosing to love through it. It means sitting with people in their darkness without trying to fix them. It means sharing your story even when your voice shakes. It means believing in hope even when your own heart still aches. People will ask you how you're so strong. But strength isn't something you wake up with. It's something you build in the nights when no one's watching. It's something you choose again and again until it becomes part of you. Light doesn't come without a cost. You can't illuminate others without burning a little brighter yourself. But oh, how beautiful it is to glow not because you've never known darkness, but because you refuse to let it win. The stories that save us. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. When he was finally released, he didn't call for revenge. He called for forgiveness. He said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness behind, I'd still be in prison." His suffering became his strength. His forgiveness became his revolution. Or think of Malala Yousafzai, a young girl shot for wanting an education, who turned her pain into a global movement for girls' rights. She once said, "They thought the bullets would silence us, but they failed. Weakness, fear, and hopelessness died. Strength, power, and courage were born." These people remind us, the world is changed not by those who have never been hurt, but by those who rise after being shattered. The quiet healers. But not all heroes wear microphones or medals. Some heal the world quietly, like the nurse who stays late after every shift because she knows loneliness hurts more than illness. Like the single father who works 2 jobs, but still finds time to tell his daughter bedtime stories. Like the survivor who starts a support group in her community so no one else feels the way she once did. These people will never trend, never headline, but they are the architects of hope. The proof that compassion is the purest form of power. You don't have to save millions. You just have to save one. And often, that one is yourself. The light you needed. Think back to the darkest night of your life, the one that almost broke you. Now imagine if someone had looked you in the eyes and said, "You will make it through this. You will rise. And one day, you'll help others do the same." You might have laughed in disbelief back then. But look at you now. You're standing. You're breathing. You're healing. You're proof that even the deepest wounds can bloom into wisdom. So maybe your pain had a purpose all along. Maybe the light you were searching for was never out there. It was waiting to be born inside you. And now, it's your turn to become that light for someone else. Key takeaways. Pain doesn't disqualify you from helping others. It equips you to. Healing becomes complete when it overflows into compassion. The light you needed once may be the light you're meant to give now. Even small acts of kindness can create unseen waves of healing. Your scars are not signs of weakness. They're symbols of survival. Action step/challenge for you. Write a letter to the version of yourself who was in the most pain. Tell them what they needed to hear, that it wasn't the end, that they were stronger than they knew, that they would rise. Then, find a way to share that message with someone who might need it now. You never know whose life might change because you dared to shine. Pain was never meant to be your prison. It was meant to be your passage, the tunnel that turned you into light. And the world, it's waiting for your glow. Chapter 12, Power Reborn. There comes a day, quiet, unannounced, when you realize you're not fighting the same battles anymore. The ghosts that once haunted you now feel like echoes from another lifetime. The scars that once made you hide now gleam like gold under sunlight. And when you look in the mirror, you finally recognize the person staring back. That is the moment of rebirth, the moment you realize that every pain, every fall, every night you thought would never end was not destroying you. It was remaking you. The return of the warrior. Imagine this. You've been through the storm, soaked, shaken, scarred. The rain has ended, but you still hear thunder in your chest. You still flinch when the wind howls. But deep down, you know, you survived what was meant to end you. That survival is not weakness. It's the crown you wear quietly, the invisible proof of what you've endured. Every scar tells a story. I broke, but I healed. Every breath says, I was buried, but I rose. You're not the same person who began this journey, and that's the point. You're wiser now. Sharper. Softer, too, because you've learned that true power isn't loud. It's steady. It doesn't dominate. It endures. That's what being reborn means. Not becoming who you were before the pain, but becoming someone who could only exist because of it. The Phoenix Principle. There's an ancient myth that the phoenix, before it's reborn, builds its own pyre. It gathers branches, sets itself aflame, and burns, willingly, because it knows what waits on the other side of fire. Most people fear the burning. You didn't. You went through it. You felt every degree of that heat. Heartbreak, loss, fear, disappointment, and you let it reshape you. And now, like the phoenix, you rise, not despite the fire, but because of it. The ashes beneath you? They're not reminders of destruction. They're the soil from which your strength grew. The silence after the storm. When life first breaks you, you think healing will come as a celebration, a loud moment of clarity, a cinematic revelation. But that's not how it works. Healing is quieter. It's the morning you wake up and don't feel the ache where it used to live. It's the conversation that no longer triggers a tremor in your chest. It's laughter, honest, unforced, bubbling out of you for the first time in years. That's what rebirth sounds like. Not thunder, but peace. Because peace, after all the storms, is the loudest victory of them all. The choice to rise. Rebirth isn't something that happens to you. It's a choice, one that must be made again and again. Every time you forgive instead of hate. Every time you choose hope instead of despair. Every time you love again, even with a scarred heart. That's you choosing to live. That's you saying, I refuse to let the past dictate who I become. You've been the victim. You've been the survivor. Now, it's time to be the creator. Because the moment you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what can I create from this? That's when you step into your true power. The stories we carry. Think of the people who've changed the world. None of them lived painless lives. Oprah was told she'd never make it. Fired from her first job, humiliated on air. Steve Jobs was thrown out of his own company, only to return and revolutionize the world. Maya Angelou survived trauma and silence, and turned her pain into poetry that healed millions. They all learned one universal truth. Pain is the birthplace of power. It breaks you open, yes, but only so light can enter. It humbles you, so that compassion can grow. It strips you down, so that truth can emerge. And then, piece by piece, you rebuild, stronger, wiser, freer, becoming your own source. There's a moment in every healing story when you stop waiting for someone else to save you, and you realize you were the rescuer all along. You were the light in your own darkness. You were the voice that whispered, "Get up, just one more time." You were the courage behind every trembling step forward. That's what power reborn truly means. It's not about becoming invincible. It's about remembering that even when you were broken, you were still powerful. You were still breathing, still trying, still here. And that's what makes you unstoppable. The world needs the reborn. This world doesn't need perfect people. It needs people who have been through it, who've sat in the dark and still choose to bring light. Because when you've known deep pain, your empathy becomes a superpower. You begin to see others not through judgment, but through understanding. You speak from truth, not theory. And the world listens, not because your voice is loud, but because it's real. That's your new purpose now. Not to prove your strength, but to embody it. Not to outrun your past, but to walk beside it with peace. You've transformed your pain into something beautiful, not just for you, but for everyone who will find courage through your story. From survivor to sage, there's a transformation that happens after deep healing. It's subtle but profound. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop chasing validation. You start standing in truth. You stop fearing endings. You start trusting beginnings. You become both softer and stronger, gentle with others, fierce about your peace. This is the reborn version of you. The one who doesn't flinch at the word pain, because you've seen what it can build. The one who doesn't chase love, because you've learned how to be it. The one who doesn't run from fire, because you are the flame. The final lesson. Life will not stop testing you. But here's what's changed. You no longer crumble. You calibrate. You no longer see failure as an ending, but as redirection. You no longer see pain as punishment, but as a call to evolve. You've learned that being unbreakable doesn't mean nothing hurts you. It means nothing destroys you. Because you've been through the fire. You've burned. You've rebuilt. And you've risen, again and again and again. That is true power. That is the power reborn. Key takeaways. Power isn't found in avoiding pain. It's discovered through surviving it. Rebirth happens when you choose growth over bitterness. The scars that once hurt you now hold the blueprint of your strength. True peace comes not from forgetting your past, but from forgiving it. You are not who you were. You are who you became because of what you survived. Action step. Write a declaration of rebirth. It doesn't have to be long. A single page will do. Start with the words, "I am no longer who I was," and finish it with everything you've become. Read it aloud. Feel every word. Then, burn the paper or bury it. Let that moment mark your transformation. Because from today onward, you are no longer the person who was broken. You are the person who rose. You've turned pain into power. Now it's time to turn power into purpose. Go out there and live like someone who's already been through the fire. Because you have. And now, you are the fire.